Good evening. Tonight, I want to tell you about a man who took 10 years to fight a war and then took 10 more years to go home. That is the whole story, really. 20 years, one island, one wife, one son who was a baby when his father left, and a grown man when he came back. Everything else, the monsters, the goddesses, the shipwrecks, the talking winds, everything else is decoration on that single, painfully human frame. A man is late coming home. Catastrophically late. His name was Odysseus. The Romans would later call him Ulysses. The Greeks called him Polytropos, a word that means roughly the man of many turns, many twists, many ways. It can mean well-traveled. It can mean clever. It can also mean slippery, in the way you'd say it about a businessman you don't entirely trust. Homer chose that word as the very first description of his hero, and he chose it because all three meanings are true at once. So, settle in. We are going to walk through this entire story, from the beginning, and I mean the real beginning before the war, all the way to the last page. And along the way, I'm going to stop occasionally and put on my other hat, the historian's hat, and ask the question that always sits underneath this material like a stone under a carpet. Did any of this actually happen? To understand Odysseus, you first have to understand that he does not come from the Greece you're picturing. Forget the white marble. Forget the Parthenon. Forget philosophers in sandals arguing in a public square. Forget democracy. All of that is roughly 700 years after the world of this story. That's the distance between us and the Crusades. The world Odysseus belongs to is the late Bronze Age. Call it 1250 to 1180 before the Common Era. And it was not a world of city-states and citizens. It was a world of palaces and kings. Archaeologists call it the Mycenaean civilization, named after Mycenae, the great fortified citadel in the northeast Peloponnese. And these people were not gentle. Their palaces sit on hilltops behind walls made of stone so enormous that later Greeks, who had completely forgotten how they were built, decided that giants must have done it. They called the masonry Cyclopean, built by Cyclops. Remember that word. We'll come back to it, and the coincidence is going to be delicious. We can actually read some of these people's records. In 1952, an architect named Michael Ventris cracked a script called Linear B, and it turned out to be an early form of Greek written on clay tablets. And what do the tablets say? Not poetry, not epics. Inventories, sheep counts, chariot wheels, including a heartbreaking entry for wheels listed as unfit for use. Rations of grain, bronze allocations, names of gods, some of whom we recognize. Poseidon appears constantly, far more prominent than Zeus. That's the world. A palace economy. A king at the center, scribes recording every last goat, workshops turning out bronze and perfumed oil, and ships moving that oil across the Aegean to Egypt, to the Levant, to Anatolia. And on the far western edge of this world, out past the mainland, in the Ionian Sea, a small, rocky, unimportant island called Ithaca. Odysseus is not a king of Mycenae. He is not Agamemnon commanding 100 ships. He is the lord of a goat island. In the great catalogue of forces that sail for Troy, he brings 12 ships. 12. Agamemnon brings 100. Nestor brings 90. This matters enormously. Odysseus is the small man in a room full of giants. He cannot win by force. He has to win by wit. His entire character is a response to his address. Now, the war. It begins, in the myth, with a woman, Helen, said to be the most beautiful woman alive. Every prince and king in Greece wanted to marry her, and her stepfather Tyndareus found himself in an extremely dangerous position. Whichever suitor he chose, the others would take it as an insult, and they were all armed. And it is Odysseus who solves the problem. He proposes a deal. Make every suitor swear an oath before the choice is made. Whoever wins Helen, all the rest will defend that marriage. If anyone ever takes her, we all go and get her back. They swear it. Helen goes to Menelaus of Sparta. Note what Odysseus has done. He has invented a mutual defense treaty. He has essentially invented NATO, 3,000 years early, and like a good lawyer, he takes his fee up front. In exchange for the idea, Tyndareus helps him marry Helen's cousin Penelope, which is the other thing you need to know about Odysseus. He married the only person in Greek myth as clever as he is. That is not a small detail. That is the load-bearing wall of the entire story. They have a son, Telemachus. And then, years later, a Trojan prince named Paris arrives in Sparta as a guest and leaves with Menelaus's wife. The oath comes due. And here is where you learn something crucial about our hero. Odysseus did not want to go. There's an old story, not in Homer but preserved by later writers, that when the recruiters came to Ithaca, Odysseus pretended to be insane. He yoked a mismatched pair of animals to his plough and went up and down the beach sowing salt into the sand. Look at me. I am mad. I am useless to you. And a man named Palamedes, clever himself, took the infant Telemachus and laid him in the sand in front of the plough. Odysseus stopped. That's the moment. That's the whole man in one image. He is caught because he is not, in fact, a monster. He will lie about anything, but he will not run over his own son. He goes to war, and he doesn't come home for 20 years. One more thing before we leave Ithaca. When Odysseus was a boy, he went hunting on Mount Parnassus with his grandfather, and a wild boar came out of the thicket and opened his thigh with its tusk. He killed the boar. He carried the scar for the rest of his life, on his leg, above the knee. Hold on to that scar. It comes back at the exact moment that matters most. I'm going to move quickly here, because the Iliad is another lecture entirely, but you need the shape of it. 10 years of siege, not 10 years of battle, 10 years of a fortified city that will not fall, an army camped on a beach, disease, boredom, raiding the countryside for supplies, and quarrels between commanders that are far more dangerous than the enemy. Throughout it, Odysseus is the fixer. When the army breaks and runs for the ships, he's the one who turns them around. When Achilles withdraws in fury and the Greeks are losing, Odysseus is sent to negotiate. He goes out at night with Diomedes on a raid into the Trojan camp, the episode called the Doloneia, and comes back with stolen horses and blood on him. He is the one they send when a thing needs to be handled, and handled quietly. And at the end, when 9 years of spears have accomplished nothing, it is Odysseus who ends the war with an idea. The horse. Everyone knows the horse. What people forget is how ugly it is as a plan. It requires the Greek army to burn its own camp and sail away, visibly, humiliatingly, as if beaten. It requires several dozen men to sit inside a wooden box in the dark, in silence, for a full day and night, inside an enemy city, while that city celebrates around them. It requires one man, Sinon, to be left behind as a deliberate sacrifice, to be captured and tortured, and to lie convincingly the entire time. And it works because Odysseus understood something about people that the other commanders did not, that a besieged city, after 10 years, does not want to be careful. It wants the siege to be over. He didn't defeat Troy's walls. He defeated Troy's hope. There's a moment in the story when the horse is inside the walls, when Helen herself walks around it and calls out in the voices of the men's wives, imitating them perfectly, and inside the horse, men begin to weep and start to answer. And Odysseus puts his hands over their mouths and holds them shut. That's the image I want you to carry. The man who wins by keeping his mouth closed when everyone else opens theirs. Then the city burns. And here the Greeks make their mistake. They desecrate the temples. They kill suppliants at the altars. They throw the infant son of Hector from the walls. The gods, who had been enjoying the war enormously, turn against the winners. The fleet sails home into a storm. And that storm scatters the entire Greek world. 12 ships leave Troy under Odysseus's command. Roughly 600 men. Every single one of them dies except him. I want to say that clearly because the story is often told as an adventure. It isn't. It's an attrition. It's a man watching his entire command die in installments over 10 years, and the poem never lets him, or us, Forget it. The first stop is not a monster. It's a war crime. They land at Ismarus, city of the Cicones, and they sack it. Kill the men, take the women, take the wine. Standard Bronze Age raiding. Odysseus says, get back on the ships. His men, drunk, refuse. So the Cicones ride down from the hills at dawn with reinforcements, and 6 men from each ship die on that beach. 72 men. Dead. Not to a Cyclops. To greed and to not listening. That is the pattern of this entire journey, established in the very first episode. Odysseus survives. His crew does not, and the reason is almost always that they wanted something and would not wait. Then a storm takes them past the southern tip of Greece, past Cape Malea, which real ancient sailors genuinely feared, a place where currents and winds could throw a ship off the edge of the known world, and after 9 days they land somewhere with no name on